So
Hi.
companies often try to measure their employee engagement, but
Mhm.
often their measurements are lagging behind. So what's your experience with this?
Yeah, fair point. I think, and truth be told, I think it's good that companies measure their engagement levels annually, but it's a snapshot. So it's taken at some point in time, and then the results often lag because they're presented back after a month or after 2 months, and sometimes even worse. I say worse because I don't like it. With okay, and we've analyzed it, and this is what we're going to do, without going back to the people that have completed those surveys, asking them, okay, so why do you feel that this is a scoring low, or what would you like to improve? So I think a lot of times people want to go back, or companies would like to have near real time or real time information about their engagement level so that they can actually interact with people on a daily basis. But that's quite hard. You're not going to send around an engagement survey every day. Now, some companies have something like they measure the mood every day. So you log on, and on your screen there's a smiley face and a sad face, and you click on something, or it's a weather image of clouds or sunshine. So you get a better sense of how people are feeling, and you can better relate to them. But still, the main thing about engagement and doing something with that, and not just giving people the perception that you're doing something with them, but actually listening to them, is in the discussion, is in talking to them. Um, we found that other formats, we have one that we call Coffee and Connect, for instance. Um, it's a nice alliteration, but the reason that we're calling this way is that we say, okay, we have a barista coming in, and there's nice coffee and there's nice cookies, and people flock. Oh, you go there, and there's a couple of questions that we have there. There's results on the screen, and we can talk about that. It's called Coffee and Connect. And I think I like it in addition to an employee engagement survey. So an employee engagement survey is meaningful. There's a benchmark there, or it's the same questions asked at the same time across the whole company. So there's an internal benchmark. But yeah, there's so many other ways to at least get to that real time or near real time experience and get the discussion going.
Okay. And for Coffee and Connect, what would be good to keep in mind when you're trying to set this up?
I think that the question should be light. People should feel safe. So it shouldn't be questions that are about, let's say, how do you feel your manager is communicating the strategy, for instance, right? That's not something that you would like to be discussing in an open setting.
Mm-hmm.
But a couple of other things come to mind. So one is we bring in the barista, like I told you, or it's a hot dog stand, or it's something that is meaningful to the type of company that you're running. Now, for instance, this is on one floor. So one of the things that is already happening is that all the people from all the different floors, or it's between office locations, they come there. So it's serendipity. People start talking to each other while they're waiting in line to get their coffee or their tea or whatever it is that they're having, and they start talking to each other. So how are you? And that's part of the benefit, I think, of doing something like that. But coming back to those questions, or what would you like to keep in mind, let's say, in organizing it, again, it should be very safe. So organizational questions, they are fine, right? So how do you feel that we're doing in terms of the strategy? So not something that relates me to potentially my manager who's sitting there in the back or waiting in the same queue. Um, what we also do is there's a large screen where people can see their responses, and there's iPads and people filling it in, so the scores are changing a bit. Obviously, the first people that are coming there, waiting for their coffee, there's a couple of questions. They would feel hesitant to put in their scores if there's nothing on the screen, because then it's not really anonymous. So what we do is we populate that a little bit. So there's something on the screen already, or there's options, or there's light questions, let's say, that we start off with. So it could be something that is more personal and about the strategy of the company, or what do you feel the values are? What's the value that we embrace the most, let's say. So it's relative questions, and it's populated. So it's not that their response is the first one. So yeah, they need to feel safe. So it shouldn't be about questions that are very personal or relate them to their manager who's also waiting in line. It should be potentially starting off with some relative questions, or not absolute. And it should be, I think, something that I haven't mentioned, something that you can then discuss. So as a facilitator, when you're standing there and the scores are on the screen, one of the first things that I typically do is I ask them, so what is it that you're seeing? without them having answered any of the questions yet. You start a discussion about that, and then you ask them to answer the same questions that they've just seen. I wouldn't say that it's priming them then, because that could be a drawback, right? That they've seen the results already and that they just go with the majority. So that is a drawback, but at least, and that's the most important thing, you have that discussion going on. So what you often see is that people then start discussing with other people that are waiting in the line. And that's, I think, the whole thing, that's the main purpose of having something like this.
Okay. And what do you do with the eventual results that you'll get from this poll or these questions?
Yeah, good point. I think, and I've mentioned that in another video where we talk about visible action. So some of those ideas or suggestions that are made there, you try and bundle them or package them, bring them back to management and ask for their permission to do something. You only do that with things that don't cost anything and you can do basically tomorrow. The other thing that we do is when we find that there's pockets of the organization or pockets of content or expertise, let's say, that need some sort of a deep dive, we then move on to the last stage of our 4 stages, which is living culture. And we try and tailor the, let's say, development needs or the things that we would like to do to really start embracing these types of culture that are undervalued or underappreciated or score a bit lower, to really do something about them effectively. So to put something in place that makes the most of what people feel is needed.
Okay, thanks, Niels.
You're welcome. Have a nice day.
You too. Bye.
Bye.